Welcome y'all to another episode of the Non-Standard Podcast. I'm here joined with my special guest, Cooper, who's in the house crawling around the bedroom. But I wanted to jump on and do just sort of like a solo episode where I just answer a couple questions some people sent me and also just talk about the key foundation around my leadership these past few years and why I'm so fine-tuned and just adamant and passionate about the way I lead and some of the key concepts of my leadership as well. And you guys can take it as it is. But the intent here is just to help you understand when you develop your leadership tools and your philosophy, you should be very passionate about them. You should believe them and you should live them every day. So for most of you that don't know, I've started this podcast in 2024 with the intent of just helping people develop their leadership toolbox. I did not see a lot of leadership training throughout my military career. It was very much like most of us where we're watching what people do wrong, watching what people do right, and we're trying to mimic them, but there is no intent behind it. We're sort of just taking what we see without implementing it as it does for us. So a lot of my leadership has come from experience, which is usually what happens later on in somebody's life. And I didn't realize it until I started leading as a young captain in my military career. Now, again, a young captain isn't your normal 4-year officer. I was already enlisted 8 years before that with a little bit of my journey there. And so I had some tools on how to lead. I just didn't know how difficult it was to lead. I obviously commissioned to become a leader, but when you become a flyer, you don't really get the chance to fully lead a group of people until a little bit later in your career, because early on, you're trying to develop your skills in the jet and obviously trying to maintain that currency. Then you're focusing on deployments and doing what the mission says. Very similar to probably what an airman is doing all the way up until their senior airman years, where they're just fine-tuning their skills, developing their trait, and working on progressing through there. So when I had my first time to lead, I was the AFE, so Aircrew Flight Equipment Officer, after about 4 years in the Ops Squadron. And I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I understood the concepts of going into a shop and making it the best run organization ever. Lo and behold, I did not know that, and I led, but it wasn't the best of my ability. I led based off of a couple tools that I was familiar with leading in my toolbox. One of those being exercise, one of those being relationships, and I think the other one was more a very direct leader. That's sort of how I led my shop with, hey, I'm going to come in, I'm going to change what I see wrong. We're going to get to know each other, we're going to work out together, and we're going to grow. And it worked. It just didn't work to the max extent over the year I was there because I had to learn, I didn't at the time, that you have to adjust your leadership traits so many times throughout everybody there. And I didn't do that, and I didn't know either. Hindsight is 50-50 back then. But that's what I always look back at, that leadership opportunity, and I sort of kick myself in the butt, and it sucks because I look back and I go, man, I wish I was the better officer and leader that I am now to help those airmen become better in their careers. But I did what I could at the time, and I think the flight knew that as well. I had some great leaders with me there within the flight too. I had a great flight chief, a great superintendent, and then I also had some great shop chiefs as well and younger airmen to help keep the shop together and keep it going strong. But that was early in my career, and like I said, this episode is really just to understand a couple questions that people have asked me, and then also my leadership philosophy that I live by every day. So we'll jump straight into the questions for those out there, and there's some pretty good ones. We got 3 of them today, and like I said, if you ever want to learn about leadership or have a curious question, you can just reach out to me. My Instagram is Manny Mustache. That's an easy way. You can reach out through the podcast or my Facebook group or whatever means you need to. Just let me know. There's a feedback app process with Spotify as well that you can do. But anyways, let's do this. All right, one question we had was, can you touch on the topic that leadership doesn't have to be full on yelling at people all the time? Although we are in the military and standards and expectations need to be met, you can still treat somebody as human. At the end of the day, we all go to sleep on the same bed and eat the same food. So this is a really good question, and there's one topic that I always discuss in my podcast, and that's be a good human, and that you will get good results. And it always baffles me when you are a good human and people think that's like an extra trait to leadership. And I'm like, no, that's not. That's just how we should be all the time. Obviously, in the military, it doesn't come off like that because most of the leaders are more managers or supervisors. So they're supervisory and managing in that perspective of making sure a task is done any way possible. And most of that is through a loud voice. Is the loud voice appropriate? Yes. Does it have to be all the time? No. It should be very little, if that. You should only have a loud voice. And if you're really, really, it should be the last resort, honestly. And the way you prevent that is I'm a huge, and I've learned throughout my leadership journey, don't act on emotion. And that's usually what's going to raise your voice is your emotion. So a lot of leaders or supervisors are always going to try to be quick to assume and quick to answer questions because they want to get the job done. And so usually when you're quick, you're using emotions and you're going to have an elevated voice because you're not controlling yourself. So a simple answer to that is going to be, man, just breathe, have the person rephrase the question or you rephrase it back to them so you understand it. And then just give an honest answer of, hey, I don't know exactly what I need to answer this question right now. Let me go figure it out. Or if it is like a very direct question, a lot of leaders that are trying to lead stumble across collapsing under stress, right? So they'll just say something. In our community, we call that wrongfidence, where they're just trying to say something to get their voice out, but it can be completely wrong. But some people will buy it because they're honest. They're just confident with it. So to answer that question, be a human, have relationships, but understand when you're using a loud voice, you're usually using emotion, and that's why it's going to come off as more aggressive on that sense. So that I think that answers that one pretty well. The second one was, what's more important, motivation or discipline? Discipline is always going to beat motivation every day. And because discipline is what you do every day, regardless if you're motivated. It's your habits, it's your routine. I am never motivated to work out or wake up every morning at 3:50 or go to the gym right after that at 5 or do a lot of these things I do. My motivation is usually always very low, but I'm so disciplined in my routine, it's like a habit now. And so my motivation comes throughout the day, usually through the small things. And so that's why I think discipline is more than motivation, because motivation is in and out and it's never consistent. Discipline is consistency. Consistency wins. Consistency gets you results. Now, motivation is going to help you stay disciplined because you're usually motivated by good results. So if your goal is exercise, right, you're going to be motivated by the way you feel, the way you look, and the way you act in the gym. That's motivation to do some of the hard workouts. Discipline is going to get you to the gym. It's going to get your shoes on, but the motivation is obviously going to help you push a little bit further in the workout. How can you be motivated? I love working out as a team. That's another way to stay motivated as well. You can get pretty motivated being around a group of people. So if you need motivation, there's that as well. To have a why is always a good motivation. And I say it all the time, the ultimate why is going to be your kids. Is that fun, Cooper? You having a good time over there? He's just tearing everything out of our bookshelf right here. So yes, if you are a parent, you are motivated because you have a why of your kids. That's going to motivate you. How do you build discipline? That is a good question. So building discipline is going to take time. There's a good concept I love, and that's the 30-60-90 rule. If you're ever trying to rationalize or see where something is going to go and it's actually having an effect in your life, think of this as a 30-60-90 rule, and you can adjust it however you need to. But I use it, again, in the fitness world because I had this same experience when I was going through it. It takes you about 30 days to build a habit, 60 days for you to see the results, 90 days for somebody else to see the results. So when you think of that in discipline, the discipline is going to come after that, in between that 60 to 90 days when you build the habit and the routine. And then after that, it's like clockwork. That's why I love 75 Hard. It's 75 days of doing 5 tasks every day to build the consistency and the discipline. So when you're done, it's part of your life. I still do a majority of the 75 Hard steps every day. I still read. I still try to drink a gallon of water every day. I weigh myself instead of taking my pictures. I don't drink alcohol. I still do 2 exercises a day. And I still track my macros. So I do a majority of 75 Hard because it has built the discipline in me. So 30-60-90 rule, if you're trying to figure out how to build the discipline, it helps. Now you can also break that up into, if it's a business, it may not be 30, 60, 90 days. It could be 90 days, 6 months, and a year, right? You can appropriately set it up for the time you need there. So that's the second question. The third question came out through TikTok. And that one was, let me go to the video if I can find it really quick. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stay with me. What makes a good follower? Lots of good discussion on leadership. I find a lot of times when guys have issues, it's because they aren't looking at how they can do better as a follower. So that is a good question because followership or like a servant leader is very important. A lot of leaders, I think he hits it right on the head. A lot of people just think that they just go straight to a leader and skip a follower, right? Like you're put in a position, you're a leader now, you're not a follower. That's false. You're always going to be a follower wherever you are in your life. So a leader is always a follower because there's usually somebody above them that they're working for or reporting to, or that's just above them. So, for instance, if you're a flight commander, you're reporting to a commander, so you're a follower of them. But you're also a follower just at all times. One of my favorite leadership traits is lead from the rear. And how do you do that? I use that a lot as a new leader. So when I was the flight commander of AFE and I was trying to just understand how to lead that shop, I have to know where the shop is going and how they're running. So I followed from the rear. I sat back and I looked at the shop and I was like, okay, let me give myself a month here just to gauge where the shop is, who leads, who doesn't, who's the loudmouth, who's the guy that fixed all the problems. Then I can make adjustments. But to be a follower, you have to understand that you're supporting somebody in the same mission, in the same why. So how to be a good one is going to be by putting your wit aside and just understanding that you're never going to be the smartest in the room. You're never going to have all the answers, and you're always going to be helping somebody out. I think a leader will know that they're always a follower because they're working as a team. And when you're part of a team, you're usually following other people around to achieve the same goal. So I would emphasize that question with, hey, how do I become a good follower? Just use a team concept and ask a lot of questions on how you can help people. That's another way to be a good follower without waiting to be told things, because most people are going to have a hard time when they're told to do something. So to get ahead of that, you should be asking on how you can solve a problem. That's a great way to be a good follower, is go solve problems. But one of the things I tell a lot of airmen that come to me with problems is please have a solution. That solution can only be like 60% or something like that. What's up? We're almost done, okay? So come with the solution and then maybe a couple COAs on how you're going to solve it. So that's a great way to be a follower right there. So those are the 3 questions I had. And then again, just to follow up with my leadership philosophy and how I live my life, it's a lead by example in all you do. To be selfless, you have to be selfish. To build relationships off trust and care, and then challenge around in front of you, getting comfortable and uncomfortable. And for those that are listening and have listened before, that is a pyramid structure. You have to do lead by example first. That's the base of my pyramid. And then it stacks up from there, because I can't build good relationships if I'm not a good person myself. So that's how that works. I can't be selfless, right, to help people if I'm not leading by example in those areas to get better. I can't get uncomfortable if I'm not at the point of where I'm at with myself to challenge myself to get uncomfortable. So it's a pyramid, lead by examples on the bottom. And the way I like to emphasize my leadership philosophy is I live by that every day. All the decisions I make, all the goals I try to do, all the people I talk to, I always have those in mind to keep me on track, and helps me say no to a lot of things as well. So I'll keep it under 15 minutes, just a short drop of some questions. If you guys have any, please feel free to reach out to me. And then let's just continue this conversation of leadership and see where it goes.